I'm gonna have to, when you talk to council or whatever, I'm gonna have to talk to the microphone.
Okay.
Mayor, you might be able to just call in on your phone.
That's what I tried before.
Yeah, and it does crazy reverb.
It's weird. Because did you have your volume up?
Are we live?
We are live.
All right.
Something with this.
Okay, we're gonna start our committee meetings now, and we will start off with Mr. Heidick and Parks.
Thank you, Mr. President. Bring to order the City Properties, Parks, and Recreation Committee meeting. It is Monday, May 11th, 2020, 6:20 in the council chambers. All members present.
They can't hear you.
My phone?
Yeah, my mic's on there. Is that better?
Can you hear him now? Well, he's not talking, so.
Can you hear this?
Can you hear that?
No.
No.
Can you hear anything I'm saying at all?
I heard that.
Okay. It's gotta go louder then. All right, City Properties, Parks, and Recreation, Monday, May 11th, 2020, 6:20 PM in council chambers. All members present, voice is noted. We have no request for legislation. I'll start off the miscellaneous discussion. We are moving forward with the dog park expansion for the small dogs. We are looking at all programs to see if there's any modifications can be made throughout the season. And the Parks Commission did vote to go forward with Mum Fest, and we will be looking at modifications as we go to what the needs are in September. With that, does the director have anything? I thought she was on.
I don't know.
All right. Anybody else have anything then?
I do. Can you guys hear me? Okay. This is Greg. I just want to let everybody know that work has begun down at the complex, the sports complex, for the Betts Ditch expansion project. The silt fence has been put in place. There's restroom facilities down there that the contractors have to provide. The job site sign is up, so there will be some activity beginning in the coming weeks with that project. They'll be moving equipment in, working inside their fenced-in area. So it was supposed to start, a little bit earlier in the spring here, but we had a couple setbacks on top of the pandemic issues. So it is now getting underway finally. Just wanted to make sure everyone's aware.
Thank you. Does anybody have anything else? Hearing none, can I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion adjourned.
Thank you. Can I have a second? Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned at 6:23.
Thank you very much. Next up is Public Welfare and Safety with Mrs. DeBette.
Thank you, Mr. President. Public welfare and safety will now come to order. It's Monday, May 11th, 2020. The time is 22, and we are in council chambers and remote. All members of the committee are present, as well as all other council members and all others noted. We have a late request for legislation. So we need to begin by invoking Council Rule 702 to suspend Council Rule 302. Do I have a motion to do so?
I'll make a motion.
Motion made by Mr. Greer. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Griffin. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Passes unanimously. So this is a draft ordinance titled Appropriating Fire Department, appropriating $7,185.57 from the unappropriated items of the general fund to the fire department operating budget. And this comes with a letter from Berkeley indicating that this money to reimburse the fire department operating budget for COVID-19 related purchases that were made at the beginning of the crisis. Anyone have any questions about this piece of legislation? It will be referred to finance.
Chairwoman, I just have a comment.
Okay,
This is not general fund money. This is money earmarked for COVID-related expenses through the CARES Act.
okay.
Does
So
any,
we need to adjust that because it says unappropriated item of the general fund. So yes, we do need to change that in the draft.
Yes.
how should it read?
Jeremy, is that coming from is that money already been sent to the city and it's reappropriated?
Jeremy's coming.
That money came from the CARES Act. The money was deposited, put into the general fund and the fire capital levy to reimburse those two funds for expenses that the city has incurred. So that money is in the general fund. The wording is correct that it needs to be the unappropriated items of the general fund because that money's already in the general fund.
I didn't want people to think that it was part of $13,000 carryover, that was money that through the CARES Act.
Sorry, what was that?
I wanted to make sure everyone understood that it was not part of a $13,000 carryover, and that this money came to the city through the CARES Act for COVID-related expenses in the fire department.
Okay, but it was deposited into the general fund, so it is worded correctly.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Does anyone else have any questions?
Actually,
Mr. Greer has a question. Sorry, Mr. Greer has a question.
My question is, how much money was deposited in the general fund, to go towards, or for the CARES Act?
I can answer that. This is Safety
I'm
Director.
sorry, you have to come to the microphone, I can't hear you.
Okay,
And it has to be this one, I can't hear on that one.
has to be this one.
It has to be this one.
Watch your step.
Mrs. Doherty's coming to the microphone.
Okay, thank you.
The total beginning amount was $15,935.57. Is that the question? Does that answer your question?
Yes, ma'am, thank you.
I have a question then for Mrs. Doherty. Is that just for safety and the $15,935?
It is all for, it's for the fire department, and I don't believe any of it went to police. And is that the answer is no?
The CARES Act money can only be used for ambulance-related services.
Okay, did you guys hear that?
So it's only for ambulance related?
Correct.
So it's mostly PPEs, and there's other items listed on here. After the money is appropriated, we would still have a shortfall of $3,737.72, and that Chief Persley has applied, or is going to apply for a grant from the Assistance for Firefighters Grant money, and he's also going to apply for additional purchases of PPE through the Assistance of Firefighters Grant.
Okay. Does anyone else have any questions?
Mrs.
Mr. Greer does.
I have one more question while we're on this topic. Does any of the CARES Act money go towards the fire or police department? I know Chief Morber was here, said that it got quite expensive. Is there any offset grant money that we have for them?
We would,
Yeah, only, just like Safety Director Gordy said, for COVID-related expenses, PPEs and those things, we have meetings all the time about clarifying verbiage, and, we're in the same boat as everyone else. personnel expenses, other expenses. It's not what you and I think may be reimbursable, it's what the auditors will think is reimbursable. So everyone's kind of treading lightly.
So. Renee,
Okay, go ahead.
I'm having a hard time hearing what Justin's question was. And I think I heard what it was, but then I'm not sure what the response was, because I think he asked about the police department.
You did.
And I'm confused about whether or not this money was eligible for police, for police as well, or no. And I'm confused about what the answer was, I couldn't hear.
The answer is no.
The answer is no. Is what she said.
For fire,
It's just for fire,
For EMS.
ambulance.
ambulance, okay. Anybody else have any questions?
Questions for this, or is questions for, is it open for discussion, she said?
Is it just for, oh, they wanna know?
Okay, there you go.
Mr. Jaber wants to know just questions just for that or anything.
You want more discussion yet? She said this,
So,
okay.
I
Can't
have
hear
a
her.
question, anything related to the state.
No, you're good.
He said, no, you're good.
Gotcha, yeah. I didn't hear what you were saying.
You're good. No question.
No question.
Do I have a motion to call for the chief of legislation?
I'll make a motion.
Motion made by Mr. Greer, second by Mr. Griffin.
Right.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And it passes unanimously. We also have, a board resolution that we will be voting on this evening. The first one is resolution number 56, 2020, titled Commendation to Chief Baldwin. And resolution number 57, 2020, titled Commendation to Firefighter Dave Thompson. Does anyone have any questions or concerns about this piece of legislation? I'm assuming that we are going to discuss when they will be able to receive the commendations, when things get back to normal. Okay. Does anybody have any miscellaneous discussion for safety?
Chairwoman, please, question for you.
Mr. Jaber.
Okay.
A couple council members, myself, were talking about downtown for closing down the streets for the restaurants, open up for outside seating. Can you do some information checks and talk to the safety department for me, for the fire department and the police department, and see what process we need to go further into that? It'd be nice to have the seatings outside for the restaurants and businesses.
Mrs. Doherty, what avenue do we have to take to do something like that?
I need to keep walking in front of the camera here. There's an ORC statute that's dedicated to outdoor refreshments, if that's what you're talking about, serving alcohol.
No, food.
Just food?
Yeah, refreshments will not be alcohol related right now. We're trying to work on a different venue to do that way.
Okay, then I misunderstood your question.
Yeah, just for food for now. The alcohol, we look for liquor control.
Yeah, I think if it's carry out from the restaurants in the area, I don't think that's a problem. It's just crowd control, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I can answer that. We actually spoke about that this morning at a committee meeting for kind of reopening. This is something we've done in the past during events. So we've talked about shutting down the roads, meeting with the businesses, shutting down the roads, providing enough fire lane and everything that is needed. I talked to the police department today, and we're in continued conversations so that we can do everything in our power to help spur the local economy when it comes to restaurants and downtown activity. So the momentum that we've been building over the years does not die. So, yeah, we've got that kind of all laid out, Councilman Jaber.
All right.
And,
But you have laid out for one day. I'm talking about more than 2, 3 days, 4 days a week.
well, we have it laid out for more than one day. There's a lot of safety concerns that we have.
Okay, what would that be? Couple of,
Crowd control,
okay,
there's a lot of people on either side of wearing a mask or not wearing a mask who take it very, very seriously.
oh, definitely, yes.
And so there's a recent event that happened in a nearby city, and it ended in a way they didn't expect it to. So safety for the residents, safety for the officers.
Also, Cincinnati did this too, though. They did it for 3 or 4 days. You know, situation talking about Cincinnati.
Yeah, we looked at that.
Yeah, that'd be a great way to follow their lead. They've been planning this for about 6 months, prior, and they started doing it when we first started. So that'd be nice if we can start, pushing this more than one day.
They can't hear.
It'd be nice to push this more than 1 day or 2 days out of the week. We could go 4 days out of the week at least. I started out saying
If I
7.
can interject, ironically, I did some research on this myself because, my son had emailed me and sent me some links about, Cincinnati is doing this very thing in their, downtown area. They are closing their roads,
Correct.
I believe for the summer, and to allow for outdoor seating, and it's just the roads where restaurants would need outdoor seating. He also emailed me, I believe places in Florida are doing it, which obviously they have nicer weather than us, but they're doing the same thing. Several cities in California are doing the same thing. I also just emailed all council members, an article that I believe is really worthy of reading. But basically, when you open it and look at it, under the area titled restaurants, it's really a concern that inside restaurants are eating. I think this is an opportunity if we did something outdoors for these restaurants, that it would ensure the safety of our citizens better against the coronavirus. It has a lot to do with the ventilation, and there's just a lot of evidence by a lot of scientists. And so I emailed everybody. I just emailed it because I just finished reading it because my son sent me an abundance of things about this. But I know that a lot of cities are considering this, and I think it is something that we have to protect our downtown. And, you don't want to give restaurants who do have a patio. People are more comfortable eating outdoors right now if they're armed with this knowledge. And that gives those businesses an edge over some of our businesses downtown that don't have the ability to eat outdoors. So, I'm certain that there are a million safety issues that come into play. And I know that it's not going to be so accurate, but I think that it's something that's definitely worthy of looking into, for everybody's safety.
Now, let's not also forget, Second Street's also considered downtown also, not just Tusk, Second Street's also considered downtown. So it'd be nice to get businesses on Second Street involved also.
I also wanted to ask Mrs. Forty, because the article that I read, about Cincinnati, they are actually serving alcohol, so I don't know how they're in compliance with ORC. It didn't give those details, but perhaps I can email and find out how they're in compliance, or,
We did some research and Betty will explain it to you, Mr. Heidi.
If I may, the alcohol portion would have to be designated an outdoor refreshment zone, which we currently don't have, and the process of applying for that and getting it approved through the state is lengthy, and at this point, we wouldn't, even if we were to apply and have it approved, we wouldn't have it till probably fall anyway. So there's not gonna be a possibility of that. If I read the ORC's right with liquor controls handbooks right.
You can purchase 2 alcoholic beverages to go, correct?
you can purchase 2 alcoholic beverages to go with a food order.
Right.
However, once it leaves, this is me talking as a manager of a business that sells alcohol, not a councilman here. Once it leaves my hands and goes to yours, if you start drinking out of it, that is an open container violation, and that's something I do not want coming back on my head.
Exactly, it would be on you, it would be on the person drinking it.
It still comes back. If I'm the one that sold it, it can,
Right,
there's still a liability issue.
good liability, I mean, I'm not saying go ahead and do it, but during this whole process, anything we need right now,
It's against the law.
it's definitely against the law, yes.
Cannot do this.
Yes. I mean, hopefully we can find a way, like I said, this is just a conversation to talk about it and find ways to communicate everybody as a team, not just one person saying I, you know?
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to.
Oh,
Are you good? Thank you.
Mrs. DeBovic?
Yeah.
Did you happen to send that email to myself or Chief Persley or Chief Morber?
I did send it to you. I just sent the article, I did not send the, I just sent it right before, when they were trying to get hooked up on city council, the meeting hooked up.
Okay,
I sent it, so I did not include Chief Morber, but I did include you, Mrs. Doherty.
okay,
And that was the article, that just had, it was an article that had a lot of information about moving forward and opening businesses up, and some things that we should be concerned about, and things that we shouldn't be concerned about. And restaurants are highlighted in this article.
okay.
I will find the link from my son's email and send you the link about Cincinnati and some of the other cities that are doing it. Cincinnati is the only one that I see in Ohio that's doing it. But like I said, it mentions several in Florida, I think being one of them off the top of my head, and several in California. But this article that I did already email to you, Mrs. Doherty,
Yes,
is really eye-opening about the importance of eating outdoors and restaurant environment for the rest of the summer.
okay. No, I appreciate that. We just have to all remember that different states, of course, have different rules. Different cities within the state of Ohio have different rules. And sometimes those rules are applied depending on population and square acreage. So we have to look at all that.
And again, this is open dialogue, just for communication in 4 different ways.
I simply read the article, he sent it to me.
No, I appreciate that.
And I just read it and I thought, oh, that's kind of a nifty thought, you know, if I'm gonna eat out, I'm probably gonna eat outdoors, I'm probably not gonna eat inside of the restaurant.
I appreciate it. I'll take a look at it and I'll send it to Chris White as well. And to Chief Persley. I don't recall if you mentioned you sent it to him.
I'm sorry, if I can send it to Chief Further, Chief Persley.
No, I can do it. I can forward it. If you send it to me, I'll forward it on to them.
Okay.
Anything else?
It's about attaching them to the article. So it's just the link. I just attached the link.
All right. I can do that. I'll take care of it. Thank you. Do you have any other questions, anyone?
Thank you.
No? All right. Thank you.
Does anybody else have any questions? Hearing none, do I have a motion to adjourn? Motion made by Tony Griffin.
And
Second.
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Greer. We are adjourned at 6:42.
Okay, next up is street sidewalks and lighting, and Mr. Greer.
I'd like to bring order street, sidewalk, and lighting. It is May 11th, 2020. The time is 6:42. All committee members are present. Mrs. Angeloff and Mrs. Fry are remote, and all other council members noted along with guests. We have no request for legislation. We do have a current piece of legislation. It's resolution number 55, 2020. Accommodation, Ron Gable. Again, this will be presented to be determined when things get back to normal. This is to be read at our next legislative meeting. Are there any remarks for the resolution accommodation Ron Gable from the committee? And are there any from the other council members?
No.
All right. Miscellaneous discussion. I have none for streets. How are we, well, I'm gonna ask, Mr. Tracy, how are we looking, with projects, street projects this year so far? Like, we just wrapped up the bridge on State Street, correct? That was a subcontracted job to refurbish underneath, or?
No, the State Street viaduct work was just part of the ODOT project. There's multiple phases in that, and it was just some corrosion work and painting on the underside of the bridge. I'm not for certain yet if they're doing any above,
They can't hear you, I'm sorry.
oh, I'm sorry. Any painting on the above surfaces that it would be noticeable, to motorists and stuff. But that was part of the ODOT project.
Obviously, we're still in limbo with finances for the streets program, so that's still where it was last time. And how are we doing with workforce as far as our street crew and patches, and what are we doing? Are we still doing cold patch, or are we running our hot patch now?
So we're still doing hot mix asphalt, using the hot box, and they're responding to complaints as needed, and they're keeping up on the ticket lists. Those guys are doing a fantastic job, given that they're working at a reduced staffing level. They're coming up on mowing grass now, and things are really starting to roll forward for the spring and summer. So we fully expect to be caught up with everything and maintain our routine duties as we always have.
What is our current staffing level for the service department?
So right now we're at a 50% reduction in staffing.
And how many total do we have members?
I'm going to say 18 off the top of my head.
So we have roughly 8 or 9 workers. And that includes, like the foreman or the team boss, or?
The street superintendent would probably be he'd probably be 19.
That's all I have for miscellaneous discussion. Does any other committee member have anything?
No.
Any other council members? Guests? All right, hearing none, do I have a motion to adjourn?
I will make a motion to adjourn.
All right,
I will second that motion.
all right, motion made by Mrs. Angeloff and seconded by Mrs. Fry. We are adjourned at 6:46.
Next up is Rules Marketing Development with Mr. Griffin.
Rules Marketing and Development. I would like to call this meeting to order today, May 11th. We are meeting remotely and in council chambers. All members present and all those noted on GoToMeeting.com. Tonight, we have no request for legislation, but we do have current legislation pending, ordinance number 46-2020, titled Proposed Charter Amendment, Elimination of Primary Election. I think we'll be going for a second reading if I'm correct. Then we also have ordinance number 47-2020, titled Proposed Charter Amendment, Primary Election. That will be going for a second reading, and all of their remarks. Are there any remarks on the current piece of legislation? No remarks on it? I would like to say, moving the primary date. I'm still in the process of looking that out, checking that out. I think myself personally, it would be a disadvantage to lure people have a winter month to try and get your campaign going. So that's one of my reasons for not, running at this moment. I'm not going to have that. I think a September primary would give us more time, would have the summer months to go door to door and get your time. So even though it would save the city money, there is other ways to do, save money too. That's just my opinion. So if we don't have any more remarks on this,
I just had a remark about, it's more about the cost. Mr. Blaker did send us a breakdown, a further breakdown, from the Board of Elections, although I would argue that it wasn't much better than the breakdown that we already had. The amount in labor is incredibly disturbing to me, and I don't know if we can get a further breakdown. It was literally lumped in of the first 5,000 that was unaccounted for as miscellaneous, 32, I don't have it right in front of me, but 32,000 for some odd dollars was in part-time labor. And I think before we pay a price tag of $65,000, I would personally, if I would pay that, I would ask for a better breakdown. I think that that's a crazy amount of money. So,
you're correct. We would need an itemized list of what we have to pay for that.
right, I think what they gave us was itemized with a percent. They itemized it with over, but they still left $32,000 lumped in part-time wages, in addition to the food workers, which was another almost 11,000. It's literally $46,000 of it was labor. That's, to me, that's insane. So I would kind of like to see that further broken down, into exactly what we paid for $55,000.
Mrs. Miller.
Yeah, I just wanted to say this, it's not like it's a negotiation. That's how much it costs. They set the cost. So for every polling place, you have to have a Republican and a Democrat for every precinct in every ward. So there's 2 workers for every precinct. And they're there from at least an hour before the polls open till at least an hour after the polls close. So if you're in Ward 3 and there's 4 precincts in the 3rd ward, that's 8 workers just in the 3rd ward in that polling location. Plus there's ancillary employees to facilitate that, and that's just 1 ward. So it is whatever they say that price is. So that's the price. That's how much it costs. And that's why they were asking for the entire county to eliminate the September primary. They don't want to have those costs. They want to drive it back to May. And we are one of only 3, is that right, Mr. Heidick?
I believe either we are the only one, or I think maybe New Franklin might still be in September.
Right. And once we become the only one, it's going to even be more. So, those issues that are being brought up of why September is better than May, we're all faced to every other jurisdiction that had September primaries and moved. So the May primary is there. It's there no matter whether we move it or not, because the judicial primary is in May, and so is the state primary. So that's there. It's going to occur anyway. We're the outlier right now, us and one other jurisdiction. And that price is not going to change because we don't like it. That's what they're going to tell us what that cost is, and that's how much it's going to be. So that's the cost. They determine that cost. We don't get to decide it. And I'm just letting you know that if we choose, and all we're doing is putting this on the ballot. It's not our decision. It's just a decision to put it on the ballot.
is that it's listed as, so all of the poll workers at each precinct, all those workers are listed individually and accounted for salary wise, between $11,000. I completely concur with that. But $32,000, in my opinion, would just be for the Board of Elections, that work at the Board of Elections.
Well, right, because you have to have the infrastructure to once those ballots are cast and the poll workers gather the ballots, they all have to go back to the board. And those processes have to be there, whether one city is doing an election or 10 cities are doing elections. There's a process there. They can't just decide to not have that process in place because only one city's doing it. I mean, that's probably set by statute of what has to occur. So and in every board of election, you can't just have one person do it. For every position, you have to have a Republican and a Democrat. That's the rule. So whatever cost there is, it's double. So the cost is the cost. That's all I'm saying. They're not going to say, well, we don't like the cost, so we'll negotiate a cheaper cost. That's what they say the cost is. That's the cost.
I'm just saying that I think when you're paying a bill, if it's $32,000 in part-time labor, and that's not part-time as far as the poll workers, because they're listed separately, I think when you're paying a bill, you deserve to know what that entails.
If I may, I think what Mrs. DeBevick was getting at is it, and I know that's what it costs, but are we paying for something like that? I think she wants to know, are we paying the wages for those already employed at the Board of Elections to do what job they would be there for anyway? And basically, we're getting charged and they're saving money. I think that's, and this applies to last year's election. In a sense, did we pay their bills for them? I think that's what she's concerned about by asking for a more itemized thing.
I don't know.
I think that's why she wanted to know. Am I correct on that, Mrs. DeBevick?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Do we have any more remarks?
Has anybody talked to any more residents or
What's that?
has anybody else talked to any more residents about this? Any members, president, council, anybody else? Mayor, have you talked to anybody about this?
Yeah.
Okay, I'd like to hear your feedback, please.
Mixed decisions and comments.
Go ahead. That's it. All right. Justin?
I'll answer Councilman Chambers' question. I have been talking to a lot of people, and I will say that most people are in favor of moving it rather than eliminating it. With that said, I don't know if that's completely relevant if we're not deciding on it, we're just putting it on the ballot. But I will say that is the general feedback as far as I'm receiving. I can maybe count on one hand people that wanted to eliminate it, and then a lot more wanted to move it.
And likewise for myself, that's a feedback I'm getting back. And Lisa, thank you for the information about the Summit County. And like I said, this goes back to the voters. It's not our decision. So at the end of the day, we should all kind of approve this and let the voters decide yes or no. Again, we are working for the citizens. We're not doing this for ourselves. Keep forgetting, because we're not I in this. We're doing this for the city. We're doing it for the people of the city and the businesses of the city. It's not about us. It's not about ourselves. So we got to clarify that and make sure everybody knows this, that we're not working for ourselves. We're working for the citizens and the business owners of Barberton. That'll be it. Thank you.
Have any more remarks? I want to say something, I don't think this is a popular thing to say, but I'm going to say it anyway. How many municipalities have two primaries? How many municipalities have a second primary for at largest and president of council? I come make them all be lumped together in one. You can save money that way too.
I don't know.
I think he's talking about the staggered elections.
Akron has reset theirs so that every elected position is on the same cycle. That was requested, Mr. Griffin.
I'm sorry, Mr. Heidi, what did you say?
Akron recently moved to that every elected position is on the same cycle so that none of them are staggered. So you don't have an election every 2 years, it's every 4 for every elected official.
Yeah, you would only have one seat for one primary for everybody, instead of having two staggered. You would say,
And that would be once every 4 years.
correct.
So it's not, you know, so the people know out there that, you know, we're not paying this kind of money on a year. It's every 2 years, we're keeping line all these other officials on the very, same, vote, on the same ordinance, and then it'd be once every 4 years.
Correct. You would save money.
I don't have the election calendar in front of me, but there is a May primary. I don't have the election calendar in front of me, but there is May primaries. There's judicial May primaries, there's state rep May primaries, there would be municipal May primaries. There are May elections. So I don't know if having an all city primary would eliminate a May primary. I would have to have the election calendar in front of me. So let's say we did all city elected offices in one election cycle. And let's say you did that, I'm just gonna make it up, and let's say you did that in 2020. I don't know if that would eliminate a May primary in 2021 if you had a judicial primary in 2021, and then in 2022 you had the state legislative primary, and then in 2023 you had a judicial primary in May. I don't know the election cycle well enough to know that that eliminates primaries. There's other primaries that occur in May other than city primaries. So that election calendar is available on the Board of Elections website and the Secretary of State website. So you can look at that and see what the cycle is. But there are other primaries that take place other than city primaries that would take place in May.
Would you still be eliminating one primary, regardless of how many more you have?
Yes, you would eliminate one of our primaries, but a primary would still take place for other offices.
If I may, Mr. Griffin, I think what Ms. Miller's trying to say is we're paying for May and November, whether we have somebody on there or not locally, because state, federal, and judicial will always be having their primaries in May. So we really, by combining them all, we wouldn't save anything over what we're doing as long as we're still paying for May and November yearly. That's correct? Thank you.
But isn't that amount adopted by everybody that's on the primary? I mean, all the different municipalities that are on the May primary, is that amount not divided amongst all of the municipalities?
Well, it's not the municipalities, it would be who is on, what offices, so to speak, are on the ballot. I'm not extremely familiar with the budgeting of the Board of Elections and federal state election budgeting. All I can tell you is that other elections occur in May. We wouldn't be the only ones there. I recall the Board of Elections coming in here, and I might not be the only one, but they stood right here and asked us to do that as a cost-saving measure. Am I the only one who remembers that?
No, I don't know.
I remember, that's why.
Okay.
They also talked about military.
Yeah, they talked about.
I think it was specific here.
It was because the September primary, they don't have time to get primary results in the generals.
Right.
Basically, September is a bad idea in all cases.
Right, so while Councilmember Heidick is bringing this to our attention right now, the impetus was not from him initially. The impetus was from the Board of Elections.
I think regardless of what we do, we have to put on the ballot to move the primary to May. That's my opinion. I think that's fiscally responsible. I think that's what we have to do, for sure. The residents that I've spoken with are fine with that. I've spoken to many people who aren't thrilled about getting rid of a primary altogether. But I'm not here to say that we'd be okay to put that on the ballot and let the voters decide. Ultimately, I just think it could be confusing for the voters with two pieces of legislation. Or about the thing.
Yeah, I certainly am not here to talk about the second piece of legislation. I am here only to speak about the movement of the primary to May. I think that the county asked for it previously. My impression was that people were generally in favor of it. It was the timing of the request was so the timing was not a way that we could do it, which we felt gave anyone enough thought in terms of getting it on the ballot for a charter amendment. It was too tight. The timing was too tight. So it was brought up now, so the timing was not tight. And it was what the county had asked for, the County Board of Elections, which was a bipartisan effort. It is also throughout the county being changed throughout the county. So that's an effort of a lot of different communities, which I think we generally call regionalization. So, it seems like a move that would be received well. So I'm just asking that be considered. But not my decision, just trying to explain the reasoning behind it.
Does anyone have anything else to say? Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make that motion to adjourn.
I'll second that.
Thank you. We are adjourned at 7:06.
Next up is Environmental Health and Social Services with Mr. Jager.
Thank you, Mr. President. Environmental Health and Social Services. Today is May 11th, 2020. Time is 7:07. Place is council chambers. Members present. Noted. And Mr. Griffin also noted through the phones. Other council members present. Today we have request for legislation is none. And open this up for discussion. All right, hearing none. Motion to adjourn, please.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Mr. Heidick, and second by Mr. Griffin. We adjourn at 7:08. With that, I pass, sir.
Thank you. Next up is Planning, Annexation, and Codes with Mrs. Anderoff.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's Monday, May 11th.
Dina, you went out. We can't hear you.
You're kidding.
Oh, there you go.
Okay. It is planning, annexation, and code. We're meeting remotely and in council chambers. All members of council and committee are available along with guests as noted. Copies of the discussion. We have no new legislation requests. We have one concurrent legislation, and it's ordinance number 15/2020. I think it's a resolution. No, ordinance. 2020 titled Formation of a Community Improvement. Yeah, first reading April 27th. This will be our second reading, May 11th. I'm hoping that everybody got a chance to read the articles of incorporation and even the chapter 1724 of the ORC. I would like to thank Mr. Heidig for emailing all of his suggestions to council. And I would like, council to answer questions and in a timely manner. This 3-4 hour meeting is extremely long. It's hard for us, but we can hear the people that are in chambers, so we will have, I will open up any questions first from my committee. Does anybody have any questions? Mrs. Copeland? Mr. Greer? Mr. Greer, any questions?
Yes.
Thank you, President. I just wanted to comment on Mr. Heidig's recommendations, or the letter he sent.
Suggestions?
Yeah, the suggestions. And I just want to say, I want to thank Mr. Heidig for providing that. And it's a lot more detailed. And I fully support the idea of having this CIC under, like, more of a public control council. We haven't seen the actual layout of positions for the CIC yet for any of the board members. But I do think Mr. Heidig laid it out very well to make sure everybody has a voice. There is something in here that I will second heavily and highly suggest that we look at making this to where it's more transparent than a standard nonprofit corporation. And I don't know how we go about that. I don't know if the mayor can speak on how we can change the structure that he proposed for the transparency, so that this is transparent. Because I believe as it sits currently, this is like a corporation kind of behind closed doors, and is kind of just like we know what is being put out, and we really don't have access to the information that goes on behind it. But I do support, I think, Mr. Heidig's suggestions and topics that he brought up are on point with what I think, what I feel about this too as well. And I would point out that I would like to see more transparency or avenues of transparency added into this, so that council.
Mr. Greer?
Yeah.
I lost you completely.
Okay, well, I'll just say this. I agree with just about everything Mr. Heidig had said in his letter. And I would like to see a little provisions in this CIC that allow more transparency, more control, a broader control of this instead of being more of a corporation, nonprofit. And like to see a lot of the things come through council when decisions are made. Or I think Mr. Heidig mentioned that we have a report, a monthly report along with the finance report with this as well. I don't know. I don't think that has to be really outlined so much in the articles of incorporation, but that is something that I would like to see put somewhere in writing that council does have over, like, the transparency is there, not only for council, but also for the public. And that's all I have.
Mr. Greer, did you read it? Did you look up chapter 1724 of the ORC?
No. So I glanced at it.
The articles of incorporation are almost exactly from the state of Ohio, and the reason that this is to be not a public records request because of they were calling it a trade secret release of that sort. You know, if you have a company coming in and then that person knows and it goes through. And they have on the 1724, the ORC says having an annual meeting where to have a monthly meeting, I kind of think that if you don't have anything going on that 1 month or you don't have the funds coming in, that that's probably why by having a monthly reading, monthly report, we don't have it. So that was one of the things, and he said the yearly audits, and that's required by the state of Ohio, according to, chapter 1724. So, do I have any other questions, Mr. Weir, maybe for your concerns on this? And, do I have any other questions from anybody?
Mr. Heidi, yes. Mr. Heidi has a question.
Pardon?
Mr. Heidi has a question.
No, I'm at my committee right now.
Oh.
Thank you.
All right, now Joyce and Mr. Mayor, no questions?
No.
No, okay. I would like to open up that Mr. Heidi can address his concerns and questions. And if the mayor would like to make a comment on those, I'd really appreciate it. Mr. Heidi?
Thank you, Mrs. Angela. I do know that the ORC codes require some of these things, and I do believe that trade secrets should be protected. The end of that letter I wrote that has what I would like to see on a monthly basis doesn't include, if nothing happened that month, then somebody can come.
Can't hear you.
Yeah, I mean, that,
Yes, and I have it.
okay. I do know the ORC requires some of these things, but I think in good faith that reporting to the council some of these things, and I appreciate trade secrets, and in no means do I mean that places should be named, but once things are finalized, there could be some reporting, and I just think that with good faith that if nothing went on that month, then the representative can come in and said, nothing went on that month, and that's great, but I want to see, since we're creating something and we're going through readings, the purpose of what I wrote was for conversation to, let's get this right, let's get things so that 15 years from now, we're not looking at what past governor did with the creation of Jobs Ohio, which is completely veiled in secrecy. I want to be able to see a conversation where we can open things up, where once a month a representative does come in and say, hey, this is what we've done, this is what we're working on. I just think it's important that if we create something, that something should report to us.
I agree with you there. I think the mayor had applied for 15 people, and so if they're at the meeting, monthly meeting, then they can report like we all report on our committees here. So, I will open this up to, Mayor Judge, if you wouldn't mind.
Of course, I appreciate the effort that was put into the concerns and the suggestions here and all the conversation that's been happening. There are safeguards for transparency, and I understand the need or want for additional transparency. And as mentioned, CICs don't meet every month, so I don't see an issue with, within the confines of the ORC, providing information on a monthly basis. And if there is no information, then that's the report. I will caution down the road, this could be costly. Putting together an audit, having that done, putting together a packet, if you will. Not extreme cost, but there's a cost to it. My concern is more like the makeup of the board. So I understand trying to get a cross-section of the community. CICs are typically made up of, one board member has to be an attorney. One board member has to have banking or financial industry experience. One board member has to know urban planning or urban development. So it's those types of backgrounds and disciplines that make up the board of the CIC. As it sits with the suggestions, if it went forward with like this, there could be some clear conflicts of interest. For example, if there's a board here with just one or two members, they would not be permitted to, possibly not be permitted to partake in any development. So if there's a development A happening, they can't be a part of it, so they can't benefit from the CIC. which means you have to bring in someone else, another group organization, so. And the other thing is, I don't know if the departments or the organizations listed here would even be interested in participating, because some of them are small staffed, some of them have other staff, but they're very busy, so passing legislation without checking with all the organizations here, that'd be one hurdle. And then making sure that any conflict of interest is taken care of. And some of these organizations may be excluded from participating in that development.
Are you done, Mayor?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Okay, any other questions, from council? Mrs. Debbie?
Well, I just want to make a comment. I really couldn't hear what the mayor said exactly, and
I've heard bits and pieces too.
yeah, and I was really interested because I'm really a proponent of what Thomas has laid out here. It's kind of a make or break deal for me. I think that the explanation that he's provided for reasoning for why certain members should be on the board, makes a lot of sense, and I didn't exactly hear the mayor's explanation.
They can hear me a little better. Mr. Doug, you can hear me a little better. The mayor sits right behind me.
Okay.
If I'm wrong, please jump in. But to summarize, some of the seats that I laid out could potentially be conflicts of interest with their own organizations, and such that if they were to participate in one project, they would be barred from participating in another. That's just one of the reasons. And with all these seats that I listed here, it was more of a conversation spur to see, get people thinking in the right direction. So possibly if I say director of BCF, if that's going to create too much conflict, then obviously that's a no-go, because that would be counterproductive of this proposed CIC plus the community foundation.
Some of the, like the director of BCF and NCS, NDS, BCDC, it might be a conflict of interest if they're applying for funds and that too. So that's why, that's one of the things that the mayor has said. Okay. And
the other organizations might be not have enough people to participate on boards, like back on, they're very busy in what they do, and they may not have someone available to participate on this board.
everybody's trying to pull federal grants and get money. Mayor, is, the article is incorporation. Now, you filed this past, you filed that through the Secretary of State, and then the Attorney General's office has to approve this?
I don't know the exact sequence of events after city council passes it, but I believe you are correct.
Okay. And then the yearly audit is done by the state as it is with HUD and everything?
I believe so, yes. I
The
believe,
state does the yearly audit?
I believe so, yes.
That is another thing that I really am a proponent of is, when I was on rules for a very long time, we've never, as city council, ever actually received the audit from HUD or just to see what we're spending money on, because we approve a very generic budget, and we never actually get to see what we allocated there. And so that's why I think Tom's idea of reporting to council, not for us to be judgmental, just so that we know what's going on, is an important aspect here as well.
And that's what I said, in the mayor appoints council member to the CIC, the next council member, whoever it is, can report back. You know, with what happened during that, if they have a monthly meeting, or if they have, I don't know if it's a monthly meeting, it's gonna be, you know, every quarter or whatever, but that, I believe, in that, by having a representative from council, that it is that representative's responsibility to, address all of us and what's going on with that, CIC. Any other questions from any other member of council?
I do have one more, just statement, kind of my perspective. What makes us different than BCDC at this point, other than,
I believe the general makeup is the same, under the same ORC guidelines. BCDC does a great job with property management and SBA loans. This would have a different focus, so we work in collaboration with all the organizations like BCDC, but would be more of a kind of a development type of CIC.
I'm sorry, can somebody, Renee, can you repeat it?
In better words, the city wants to control it. They don't want other companies controlling it. They don't want BCDC controlling it. And that's in other words, you know, the mayor and the city administration want to control it.
That's not what I said.
All the way around it, that's what you meant.
Councilwoman Angelo, if that's not what I said, what I said was that development has different phases and different focuses. BCDC has a focus on SBA loans and property management, and they do a great job at that. The focus of the CIC would be more development.
The development of the property,
Correct,
the real estate of the property.
correct.
Okay, I saw that Mrs. Fry had her hand up. Did you have a question concerning this piece of legislation?
The only question that I had was these articles of incorporation, they are going to go out basically as they have been prepared, and I guess it's not a statement, but it's, I mean, not a question, it's more of a statement. Within those articles of incorporation, it does not mention specific, positions that would make up the board. So I think that, we could go ahead and file the articles, and then the board would be determined at a later time. Am I right about that? Or?
No, Article 3, Board of Directors, Section 2, composition of the board. And it highlights, the mayor, service director, one member of city council, residents or non-residents. Is that what you're asking?
No, I'm saying that in Thomas's, suggestions, he actually points out that it should be a member of Barberton, a member of Plymouth County Health, a member, we do not have to go that far. That's what I'm saying with the article. Because he basically, I knew that he has been like the mayor and the service director, and that's the thing. We don't have to go, 15 members and say, who all is going to be on the board. That would be determined after this all passes through, when we are setting up the board.
Let me ask you this question then. Once it passes through, once the articles are filed, then council no longer has a say to say we would like these people to be on the board. Am I correct? I mean, nothing else comes back to council. So basically, what Mr. Angelo mentioned that is written in Section 3 is just some suggestions of who may be on it, and ultimately those would be determined and taken as an appointment by the mayor, and would never come back to city council. Am I mistaken with that, or?
I would think that would be an appointment from them.
Oh, when we have to approve those appointments?
That's what I want.
So I guess unless I can see that with my eyes, I don't know. Okay.
The way I understand the legislation is that council is to, per ORC, is to approve, and under section, Article 5 of that, it talks about the initial board of directors, which is spelled out with the mayor and the service director, and et cetera, until the initial organizational meeting, annual meeting, and other meeting called to elect the board of directors. So under the code of regulations is not what is being asked for council to, per ORC, to approve. So the code of regulations, section 3, is that where it kind of spells out a little bit more detail. So I believe that the articles can be approved, sent to the state, and then the code of regulations can be updated, I believe.
I'm sorry. I didn't hear that totally.
You talk really low. You just have a low voice.
Well, it's very plain there. Once, if we approve this, you come back with the appointees to be approved by city council.
To be confirmed as other boards and regulations? To be confirmed as in other boards and commissions?
He's asking, are you talking the same like as any board or commission? Yes.
As long as it does not violate the ORC.
I would like to defer, I would like to ask the law director if she could weigh in on her thoughts on this.
Yeah, it can't be. So this is a separate corporation. So you can't have another body controlling a separate corporation. So you don't control BCDC's corporate board. So you couldn't control that. It was actually, I was actually thinking about that when I read them, and I was like, I wonder why this isn't affirmed by council. I thought of that, and then I thought why it wasn't, and it's because it's a separate corporation, right? So you can't have a separate corporation being controlled, which is what it would be if a city council was controlling who was on the board. So it's a separate corporation.
I'm sorry, did she say it's a separate corporation?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we would not have control.
No, that's why you have to be deliberate when you approve the articles of incorporation, because that's where your input is
Control.
important.
Control, it's just about, it's not at all about control, it's just that, and these are things that we want to see. It's what I think.
It's more oversight than control.
It's, I would not even, all I'm saying is, if you're gonna create a corporation and the city is going to create a separate corporation, this is the moment in time when you have input. This is the snapshot in time when you have input. So this is the time you have the input. So have the input and the vote. This is it.
And this is why we need outside people, because right now if we do the inside through the city, people already think we're corrupt as it is. And this will make it look more corrupt. So this is why we should keep it from the outside. Example, keep BCDC in charge.
Well, I can tell you as the law enforcement officer of the city of Barberton, not one person has alleged corruption amongst any city official in the city of Barberton.
And I think the mayor said the BCDC is very different compared to this corporation. It's two different things totally. Okay, any other questions from anybody from council?
Mr. Greer.
Thank you, President. I'm just gonna make one statement, and ask one question. April 25th, I wrote the mayor an email and I asked him what the difference was between BCDC and this, and his response, and I quote, BCDC was started by the city for economic development.
Excuse me, you're gonna have to slow down and copy again. I missed what you're saying.
She's got kind of a delay.
Okay. So on April 25th, I wrote the mayor an email asking for details and what makes this, one of the questions I asked was what makes this different than BCDC? And I'm going to quote, this was his response. BCDC was started by the city for economic development, but since that time, economic development has changed and evolved, and BCDC has become its own entity. The city still has a vote on the board, but there are 20 plus other votes on the board as well. My concern is what makes us different than BCDC, and what safeguards do we have, and is that still, you still believe that it's not about control when you said that we don't have the votes on the board?
It's more about the focus. I was giving you a historical perspective. I don't know how it changed or exactly when it changed from the 80s to the way it is today. But it functions in a way that they focus on SBA loans and property management. They do a great job at that. So the change is the focus. The difference is the focus.
What safeguards have we put in place to make sure that this doesn't go that same route?
Well, I don't know how that happened in the first place, so I don't know what kind of safeguards. You know, they'll be reporting to council every month, whether that's in the paperwork or not.
But as stated, we don't have any control over it at that point. We have input now. I'm asking what.
Just to throw this in here, I really don't think the word control is what needs to be used. It's, we have no oversight after it's, if it was to pass, we would have no oversight.
Was control used in the email?
No, that's why I quoted it.
Yeah.
Well, so that begs the argument, right? So if the loss of input by the city has happened at BCDC, right? Because the city doesn't have a majority on the board, right? So if the city doesn't have a majority on the board of BCDC and you have loss of input, right? And you create a board that's before you now where the city has the majority on the board, then the city, who you know, because you meet with them every day, has the majority on the board, then the city, which is all of you, would have more input. If you add to the board that's in front of you people that create less of a majority of city people, then the city would have less control over that organization. I don't know if that's right or wrong, good or bad. I'm just saying that you would then just create a duplicate of what you have now. So that may be your intention. That may be what you want. I'm just saying that if that's not what you want, then you wouldn't want to do what you suggested. So that's the issue before you, right?
That's my concern.
Well, and again, this has never been about control.
Mr. Jabber, about the corruption in the city. That really hits because along with HUD and all the other grant money that we get, the state comes in and does an audit. Mr. Slater, through the state of Ohio, he has to answer to them. This particular corporation too will have a yearly audit required by the state. So I don't like, and it's wrong to say the city is corrupt. Because we answer to higher. I mean, it's just not the mayor. I mean, we answer to the state of Ohio and a lot of different things and a lot of the grant money in that. So that's very disturbing to hear that. I'm just appalled at what you said. Do I have any other questions?
Thanks for your opinion.
Members?
I have one more question also.
Do we have a motion?
I have a question.
There's one question. We have a question.
Oh, okay.
Has there been any leads, Mrs. Doherty, on the planning director?
Yes,
And who is that?
that's the planning commission's decision, and that's their announcement to make.
Okay, but there
They're
is.
the ones that appoint the position.
Okay. And also, for zoning, I think as city council members, we need to look forward and maybe communicate better with the planning commission about rezoning some of the parcels in our city. We had one business owner was very interested in Norton Avenue, the old Shamrock Motel, and was denied because of zoning. Not denied, but said that they did not want him in that zoning parcel for a truck stop. Furthermore, also, Mr. Doherty, there's a sign that says no truck parking and no turnaround. Every night you'll see about 7 to 9 trucks, semi-trucks parked on that property. And that's why he thought it would be a good spot for a truck stop parking. So if you can, get a hold of the police department for me and see what we can do about enforcing that sign.
If it's is it private property?
No, it's city owned.
That the trucks are parked on?
Yes, ma'am, it's city owned. The last 3-4 years it's been used as a truck stop parking. Mr. Heide?
It's the old Shamrock property, which the parcels are C3. The gentleman you spoke of was looking to put a truck stop, unfortunately.
Invest over $300,000 into the
But
building and
what
property.
Mr. Jaber is saying that property where the Shamrock nightclub and Shamrock Motel is, there is at least a dozen semis there overnight and at least 5 to 10 there during the day at all times.
For the last 4 years. So they say it's a prime real estate. It's not prime real estate. It's been a great investment for the city to put something in that prime real estate. I'm looking at you, Mary, because that's your wing. You should be, again, more into it, the planning,
Again, as I mentioned last week, I asked you to have that person.
He talked to Stacy, so why don't you talk to Stacy and have you talk to him? Do your job, like the school says, do your job.
Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'm not done talking yet, ma'am. I'm not done talking. There you go again, cutting people off again at committee meetings. I'm done speaking.
I have a motion to adjourn by Mrs. Coleman. Do I have a second?
You cannot do that, by the way. When the council member is talking, you cannot adjourn a meeting. For future president, can you please let her know how to do her job, please?
Look, I just want to ask something. I thought BCDC owned that property.
No, the city of Barberton owns that one.
All right, thank you.
President, can you please acknowledge that?
Okay.
Thank you. That's twice you've done it, Mrs. Angela.
Do I have a motion? Do I have a second?
She can't do that.
Mr. Mendes, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Mendes, seconded, and planning is adjourned at 7:40 PM.
Okay, next up is city utilities, Mrs. Colbert.
Thank you, Mr. President. Utilities rule is on the order. This is May 11th. We're meeting both in council chambers and it looks like all of us are in. All members are present. We have no request for legislation this evening. Do we have any discussion for utilities? Mrs. Belli? No. Mrs. Fry?
No,
Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second it. We are adjourned at 7:41.
Okay, finance, Mrs. Fry.
Thank you, Mr. President. Finance and personnel, are meeting beginning our meeting at 7:47 on May 11th, Monday, 2020, in council chambers. All members of the committee are present either in council chambers or remotely, as well as guests noted on the meeting. We have one late request for legislation, and we'll have to invoke Council Rule 702 and Council Rule 302. And it is regarding appropriation from the fire department. Do I have a motion to invoke Council Rule 702?
I'll make the
Okay, motion made by Mrs. Devick. Do I have a second?
I will second.
Seconded by Mrs. Antoine. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we have a draft ordinance titled Appropriation Fire Department, appropriating $7,185.57 from the unappropriated item of the general fund to the fire department operating budget. This was referred from safety, and Mrs. Devick, actually explained everything about this. It's from the CARES Act, for COVID related, expenses, for the fire department. Does anybody have any more comments regarding this piece of legislation? Okay, hearing none, do I have a motion to call for this piece of legislation?
I'll make a motion.
Thank you, Mrs. Bevick. Motion made by Mrs. Bevick. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Seconded by Mr. Hedges. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
It passed unanimously. We do have one piece of existing legislation that is on, that we will have its, well, actually, it will have its third reading tonight, and it is to enter into contract with, Regional Income Tax Agency, RIA. Does anybody have any questions about this piece of legislation? Mr. Hyde?
Thank you. I just have one question after we all looked at it for 3 weeks. Mr. Flicker, Mr. Mayor, you were the two that deal with our taxes the most. If I put 2 pieces of paper in front of you, one said CCA, one said Rita, all I want is, who would you go with?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear what the question was, Mr. Hyde.
I just asked the finance director and the mayor if they had to choose between CCA and Rita, since they have to deal with them on a daily basis, which one would they prefer?
Oh, if they had to go with, is that what you asked?
Yes.
I mean, from an information standpoint, Rita's gonna provide more information. They're gonna have, in my opinion, better service for the citizens, better service for the city. Just from their different availabilities of being able for a taxpayer to make their payments, to file their taxes. For us, we have more reporting options through that. I'm gonna be able to have a dashboard that's gonna be more up to date. It will be one day behind where information I'm getting from CCA is a month or 2 behind. So from an information standpoint, Rita's gonna be able to provide more information and provide better service for the citizens.
Thank you.
I can't add too much more.
Thank you, Mayor. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone else have any questions? Okay, we do have the finance report, and, if Mr. Piper would be so kind as to give that overview of the report, I would appreciate it.
Starting off with the health insurance fund, the revenues for the month of April were about $373,000.
You guys hear? They can't hear you. Do you want to hear for this one? It's up to you.
I can if it makes it easier for that.
Probably. We're gonna switch this for this one.
Okay, thank you.
All right, starting with the health insurance fund. The revenues for the month of April was about $373,000. Expenditures about $320,000. The unexpended fund balance is about $732,000. The year-to-date, the revenues is $1,222,000. Expenditures are $1,149,000. Net year-to-date is a positive $73,000. Moving on to the income tax fund, our estimate for April was $897,000, almost like $898,000. Our actuals came in at $768,000. That is roughly about $130,000 below our estimate. Our year-to-date receipts for the year, our estimate is about $3.6 million. We're at $3,957,000, where we're over our estimate by about $336,000. I will say, even though we're over our estimate by 336,000, due to COVID, I'm expecting that, us being over that estimate, that's going to be brought down, quite a bit, in this coming month, I have a feeling, just because so many businesses were closed for so long, and people being out of work, that means withholding tax will go down. So I'm going to guess that that estimate is, we're either going to be right at the estimate or possibly even a little undercome once we get the information for this month. We did transfer 800,000 to the general fund, which for the year we've transferred 4,966,000 to the general fund. Looking at the statement of cash receipts and disbursements, we have a handful of funds in the negative. The first one is the city grant fund. That is due to us pulling out the POs for the EPA grants that were approved by council at the end of last year, I'm pretty sure it was. Those we will get reimbursed once we do the expenses. The next fund that's in the negative is the CDBG fund, which is the HUD grant fund. We get reimbursed once we pay out the expenses. Next fund in the negative is the Norton Sanitary Sewer Construction Fund. And that one, once we get reimbursed through OWDA for the various loan projects that are going on, that will get that out of the negative. Next one is the health insurance fund. That's in the negative due to us taking out the PO for healthcare for the whole year. So once this year goes on, that fund will slowly get out of the negative and become a positive. And then the final fund in the negative is the internal cost allocation fund. And that is due to POs being taken out for fuel. And once we go through the year, we'll do the chargebacks that reimburse that account to get that out of the negative as well. Looking at the last 3 months of activity, you will notice that the general fund did go up in the unencumbered cash balance from March to April. It's up because we received the first half property tax payment in the month of April, so that helped boost that up a little bit. The special revenue funds is down by about 600,000. A lot of that has to do with we had the note issuance in the month of April where we paid down on the notes, so that's why that dollar amount went down. Enterprise funds are down a little bit, just due to a little bit slower utility collections because of the pandemic that's going on. And then all other funds, you'll notice that the negative number has gotten smaller. That is due to the chargebacks to like the healthcare fund. Comparing prior year to current year, you'll notice in the general fund, the unencumbered cash balance is $3,460,000. Part of that is we have transferred so far $800,000 more compared to last year at this time. And then also our disbursements are down by about $300,000. Special revenue funds are up by about 1.2 million. Enterprise funds are down by about 500,000. All other funds, if you look at the cash balance is down by 340,000 roughly. And the unencumbered cash balance comparing the 2 years, we are down about $1 million compared to last year at this time. And a lot of that has to deal with the PO being taken out for healthcare and that.
Thank you, Mr. Baker. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Baker? Hearing none, do I have a motion to offer acceptance of the April 2023 report? Thank you. Mrs. Bevett gave a motion to accept. Do I have a second? Mrs. Angela seconded the motion. All in favor, please
Aye.
That's unanimously. We have, appointments for the Charter Review Commission. And, if everyone checks their email, the mayor did send along the applications for all of these members, for the Charter Review. Does anyone have any questions for the mayor regarding this? Mr. Bevett?
Yes, I just wanted to clarify, I did not receive the proper paperwork for all of the commissioners. Oh, I was missing 3 of them, I don't know if everybody else got it, and I didn't. I would just prefer to call for it tonight, I see that it's on our agenda to vote tonight, and then, Mayor can send us the rest of the paperwork, and we can vote next week. Or next time we meet.
As I mentioned in my email, I was waiting to hear back from the other 3. We did make some phone calls, to have that filled out, today. And this isn't a first reading, second reading type of, process. This is just to confirm, the appointment. So I will have that for everyone. I assume that they're downstairs, but I did provide a bio of each person who did not turn in, or who we're still waiting for the questionnaire.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you, I apologize.
I don't know what he said. Can you hear me, Carla?
I can hear you, yes.
Okay, I don't know what the mayor said, but in addition to it, the bios or the, I don't know what you call that paperwork, the work that they had to fill out to be on the commission. The ones who did not have theirs in yet, I think there were 2. But it didn't great. They did have, he did send information about them. Yes, it was Vic Myers, Amy Jones, and Terry Hayden.
Yeah, I saw that he wrote something about them, but does our charter call for us to have that questionnaire?
No.
No?
No.
It's just my opinion, I'd rather write, I don't care, that's my personal opinion, that we should have all of the information before we do it.
Does anyone on the committee want to weigh in on that? President?
Well, we could delay that if you want.
Are we meeting next week?
2 weeks.
So it'll be 2 weeks, so that shortens the time frame.
How much time do you need?
Everything has to be to council to make a final recommendation to the voters of the Board of Elections by the end of July.
Do you have enough time then?
The sooner the better.
That's up to Mrs. Fry.
But whether or not we take it to the vote?
Yep.
I think that we're really, we need some time to go over the charter and, we could then set up a date and what have you, because I noticed that the date was set up for their meeting. I think most of us know the individuals personally that haven't gotten their paperwork in yet, but how does the rest of the committee feel? Dina, do you want to weigh in on that?
Well, it's hard for me because I know most of them, I've worked with most of them. And some of the paperwork that came through, especially Mr. Harden's, I could hardly even read it on the computer, it was so small. So I think with the breakdown of the 3 that didn't send theirs in as of yet, I think with the breakdown, for me, it's
Actually, the information that the mayor has, provided us with is the same information that we got, needs. It was what boards and commissions they have served on and that type of thing. So,
I'm just curious, moving forward, how we, last year we talked about, putting a certain, special application in process for appointments. And here we are, 6 months later, and we have the same threat. We have the same, we have the stuff.
No, that was a new application. Carl, that was a new application. It had JDIC's name on it as an attention now.
As I mentioned, the applications
The application,
Yes.
were sent out.
this is that person. But the application is not the same application, I don't believe, that he discussed in rules.
We never finished the thing in rules, Carla.
We never finished the thing in rules.
No, we never finished it, we have to round it to Mr. Riley.
It's the same application I gave to the Rules Committee last year. And that we've been using ever since.
Was it advertised like we discussed, or was it?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, I saw it in the paper.
Okay.
And it was for other commissions, like planning commission, and there was, applied for, other positions that was available in the city.
Correct.
On every single application here that I have in my hand, it says, I was asked by the mayor.
Yes, the mayor asks the people in charge of review, that's normally his job is to call and ask.
Okay, so we didn't advertise this.
We did advertise. We did not receive any applications through that process.
Okay,
The advertisement that was in the paper did list numerous board positions and expiration dates. I do remember seeing that, and I do have it at home there.
I did not see that, so I'm not. So. I want to make sure moving forward that we, Mr. Hyde, that we continue on that. That's something that I'm kind of passionate about. And, I always feel like we're working under some sort of crunch, and we never have the information. So, that's something that I would like to work on. If we need to vote tonight, that's fine. I personally know every member, and I can vouch for every member, but I don't know if the other council members know.
well, I think it does too. And Craig, do you know all the members?
Yes, I do.
What about the other council members?
And that's why I added a short bio.
They're not, most of them, we don't know. Maybe we don't know.
How is it fair for them to vote on, to appoint somebody that they don't have any people?
That's why I provided the short bio. Until we got the application, then I will send that out, the questionnaire.
I don't have a problem. I guess you have to get the new council members if they know them and what their thoughts are.
All right, do the other council people want to weigh in and say whether or not they're comfortable with doing this?
Is Nina gonna allow us to speak, or is she gonna stop us?
I personally know all of these people, so I do know what their qualifications are and their levels of service are.
Thank you, Mr. Heidi. Mr. Griffin?
I don't know the lady. What's her name again?
Amy Jones?
Amy Jones. I can't place her. I don't know. I know the other people.
Well, how do you feel about voting on it tonight?
Oh, I'm comfortable with voting on it because I think I have her information.
Yes.
I have it to read.
How about, Mr. Greer?
Thank you. I know most of them. I printed out some of these, and I'll be honest, I don't really feel comfortable voting on it with the lack of information, the lack of application.
Mr. Jaber?
No, I'm not feel comfortable voting on that, more information. Thank you.
you can put it out of committee and have, vote on the next council meeting?
26th of May.
Again, this is an appointment, so it's not a vote out of committee, it's a vote by all of council after the third reading.
Have you heard it? Three readings, Bill?
No, he said this is not a three reading.
We only have two. I mean, we need to, so the thing is, we need the charter review commission in place. I guess I only know these people, but I know that there are council members that probably don't. And for them, they deserve to have the information. And so, I mean, we definitely can't go three readings. I think we should take it out of committee and vote on it next time we vote.
Again, this information could be downstairs.
I just want to be clear. This is not an ordinance. There are no three readings. On your agenda, after there's the first reading, the second reading, and the third reading, then there's an agenda item called appointments. This is the appointment section of the agenda. This is not a third, first, or second reading. So everybody understand that?
This is ridiculous. I can't hear. And last year we had one changes.
Mentioned it would not, it's not like the legislation, it's departments. And so we're just gonna say, yeah, we don't know.
I just want everyone to understand, you can choose not to vote on it tonight, of course, but you would just vote on it the next time you meet.
I cannot hear what was said.
She said you will not be voting.
I'm really
You just have to
loud.
make a decision whether you're gonna vote on it tonight
You guys don't need a
or wait till the next meeting.
It doesn't stay there.
Hold it, hold it.
There you go.
I think there's enough time to
Take charge.
wait until the week.
There's a little gremlin in here.
Okay, so you would vote the next time you meet. It's not like you're calling for an ordinance.
Did you say that we could vote the next meeting?
Yes,
Vote it out of
if that's what
committee
you
right now?
choose,
You're
yes.
not voting it out of a committee. It's not an ordinance.
We're gonna vote on it at our next meeting.
Okay.
I think they're getting, it's in the finance committee, so they're thinking that they're bringing it out of their committee to council, that's what they're thinking.
Yeah, you are not voting it out of a committee. It is just on your agenda, it is the very last item on every agenda, which is appointments. Right, and then comments from the mayor.
Does somebody have to make a motion? I have it on my sheet that I'm supposed to make a motion
I
to.
don't know because I couldn't hear.
I'm asking Renee.
I believe you guys are ready until the 26th, correct?
Yeah.
So we're just gonna, your committee, I guess I'm confused too, she's always given to a committee, like, the planning commission, when they have a member that they appoint, and it comes out of that committee, and then the whole council votes for it. So I guess we're confused there. They always have it in committee. So they wanna know,
Right, but they keep saying that they're gonna call for it. You're not calling for it like you're calling for an ordinance.
correct,
Yes.
they're asking, should they be voting on it in their committee? Whether they want these individuals.
Okay. I suppose you can do that, but let's say the three people in that committee chose not to call for it. That doesn't mean it would deprive the rest of council from voting for it in the appointment section of the agenda. That's why I don't understand this.
I guess we have always, I guess that's the problem, like right now, this was given to the finance committee. So
Right,
it should
it
have not been given to finance, it should have been given to all accounts.
I think that the argument would work in the planning commission where it's the planning committee of council in the planning commission, but charter review, that's all of council.
So we're just discussing it in finance and they'll vote on it in the whole.
Absolutely.
Okay.
All right,
And
okay, thank you for clarifying that.
Councilwoman Frye,
Any other,
Mayor Judge has a comment.
pardon?
Mayor Judge has a comment.
Okay,
my only comment is that these appointees meet all the qualifications per the charter. If someone doesn't know someone, that should not be a reason to not vote or to vote against that person or the entire slate. We are doing everything we can to get those questionnaires in. It's not a part of the rules of council, but we've been doing this. The fact that we don't have them here in front of everyone, even though I submitted a short bio on all the appointees who we are still waiting to hear back from, it's the same type of information. And as soon as I get those, I will give them to you. Just like we sat here a few weeks ago and I said, I have the information downstairs. You'll have it in your mailbox before the end of the night. The council members that attended that night, only one stayed to get the information. So you'll have the information as soon as I get it. That may be tonight. I just want to point out that all the appointees meet all the criteria to hold this commission position, and I don't want to hold it back another 2 weeks.
Renee,
Yes.
can we just call for tonight? Just the, whatever.
It's on the agenda for tonight, Carol.
Okay, all right, we'll just vote on it tonight then. All right, did anyone have any miscellaneous discussion? Maybe finance? Hearing none, do I have a, motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Motion made by Ms. Babbitt, do I have a second?
I'll-
Second from Mrs. D'Angelo, and we are adjourned at 8:11. Thank you.
Okay, we'll take a 1-minute break. We'll get right into the legislative meeting.
We need to find out.
Those pews are rough.
Lisa?
Yes. It's just unemployment, yeah.
I'm still trying to get a contract.
Yeah. Well, I think that it makes sense, I just wanted to know that it doesn't have
CCA
to,
right
like,
now
you're
is
not like, it's not a
during
three-ring
that time, it's
situation.
always a tough time.
In the planning commission,
So
that would
we're-
make sense to go to the
We
planning
would
committee.
always wait
Yeah.
until like the final day of April to post everything.
No, it's just a majority,
Hoping
it's a simple.
to always get the actuals. Because what they do is they'll send like an estimate to
Yeah.
us.
I know.
And I always want to post actuals.
Okay.
And so that's
Right.
what they do.
I see.
Is they just send us an estimate. We wait. And the problem that they have right now. Stay safe. I mean, during the full time, right now, they're only open 3 days a week for like 4 or 5 hours a day.
They're not even like full-time staff.
I told my husband, we only
So they're
send
only
her
literally,
days.
there's only somebody in the office 3 days.
I mean, there are some employees that are working from home that I understand, but
Not available to you.
no, I emailed one of the higher up people saying, hey, I don't want to get the answers from others. I know you guys are behind the eight ball right now with reduced staff and reduced hours, but I kind of need that information. And nobody knows what I want for it. Just
So Rita's adapt to the times and CCA is still operating back in the day.
Rita,
The CCA is City of Cleveland.
yeah, they're essentially sitting.
But they've not like,
And part of it has to do with, I mean, you got Rita that has over 300 entities. So being able to upgrade their software, there's just, you have the cost savings there. They can keep up with the times and how many entities are involved. Because you split out $100,000 upgrade amongst 300 entities. That's what, 300 months a piece.
Just pass the cost on to them anyway.
So,
works for
I
me.
mean, that's why they're able to provide different level of service than CCA can. The CCA is run by the city of Cleveland's budget.
which is fun.
All right, so, I mean, that's the downfall. Now, the people that I talk to at CCA, that I've always dealt with, absolutely love it.
I'm sure they're people, but if they're hamstrung in what they can do, then sometimes you have to take business out to the tree and shoot it.
Ask the governor. I think you should call the governor. I'm not, my speaker's on.
Hey, you need somebody to call the governor?
What's that?
You don't like my desk?
You're out. What is it? Is there any, yeah, what is it? Overview.
Workers' comp.
I'm not worried about something for now.
Multi-stand.
I'm not here.
They don't have any.
That's where it's confusing.
I got them to do.
So why is it such a?
I just can't, this pew killed me, right?
They don't vote.
Because like, we don't know.
How do you guys both do it, take turns, or?
No, my wife usually puts it.
Oh, does she breastfeed?
She tried.
Yeah.
Like she was heartbroken. I said, it's not.
Oh, no, it happens. I haven't
Well, that person mentioned it.
It's really hard for them.
Yeah, you ready?
Oh, now you're gonna have to stand up, like that.
Let's try. It was amazing.
Never did a pledge of allegiance.
We don't at committee.
We do know.
No, not at committees. Because they're usually all over the place.
Oh, yeah. That's the, yeah, I get you. But it's not written down here.
Oh, please stand for the insurance.
Right.
It was the, last week we didn't do it. I can't do it last week.
Okay, let's get this meeting going. Okay. Okay, this is a regular legislative meeting, the Barberton City Council. Today is Monday, May 11th, 2020. It is 8:16. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by the invocation by Mrs. Fry. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Heavenly Father, as this entire world is dealing with this everything it impacts. We pray that you will intervene and guide us in making good and thoughtful decisions. Please open our eyes and hearts to the suffering of all your children. Please protect all of our essential workers in grocery stores, pharmacies, and all the frontline workers. Protect our nurses, doctors, scientists, first responders, and military personnel. Let us all turn our attention to you and your teachings, that we may grow stronger in faith and purpose. We ask these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Clerk, please call the roll.
Mrs. Angela. Here. Mrs. Coburn.
Here.
Mrs. DeBevick.
Here.
Mrs. Fry.
Here.
Mr. Greer.
Here.
Present.
Mr. Griffin.
Here.
Mr. Heidi.
Here.
Mr. Jaber.
Here.
Approval of the minutes of the public hearing. Mrs. DeBevick.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to make a motion for the approval of the minutes of the public hearing held on Monday, April 27th, 2020, as presented.
Thank you. And Mr. Hyde.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll second the motion to approve the minutes of the public hearing.
Thank you. It was moved by Mrs. DeBevick and seconded by Mr. Hyde to approve the minutes of a public hearing held on Monday, April 27th, 2020, as presented. Are there any remarks? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Minutes are adopted. Approval of the minutes of the regular legislative meeting. Mrs. DeBevick.
Thank you, Mr. President. I make a motion for the approval of the minutes of the regular legislative meeting held on Monday, April 27th, 2020, as presented.
Thank you. Mr. Hyde.
Thank you, Mr. President. I will second the motion to approve the minutes of the regular legislative session.
Thank you. It was moved by Mrs. DeBevick and seconded by Mr. Hyde to approve the minutes of the regular legislative meeting held on Monday, April 27th, 2020, as presented. Are there any remarks? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Minutes are adopted. Approval of the minutes of the special session. Mrs. DeBevick.
Thank you, Mr. President. Before I make a motion for the approval of these, might I make a suggestion for us here, or us outliers, that do not stand in council chambers, because when they stand to second the motion or whatever, we can't hear because they're too far away from the microphone.
Okay, duly noted.
Thank you, Mrs. President. I would like to make a motion for the approval of the minutes of the special session held on Monday, May 4th, 2020, as presented.
Thank you. And Mr. Hyde.
Stand or seat. Should I stand or seat?
No, sit.
Okay.
You guys can sit.
Okay.
Just talk more into the mic.
Thank you, Mr. President. I will second the motion to approve the minutes of the special session.
Thank you. It was moved by Mrs. DeBevick and seconded by Mr. Hyde to approve the minutes of the special session held on Monday, May 4th, 2020, as presented. Are there any remarks? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Minutes are adopted. Acceptance of the finance report. Mrs. Fry.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for the acceptance of the finance department report for the month of April 2020 as presented.
Thank you. And Mrs. DeBevick.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to second Mrs. Fry's motion for acceptance of the finance report.
Thank you. It was moved by Mrs. Fry and seconded by Mrs. DeBevick to approve the finance department report for the month of April 2020 as presented. Are there any remarks? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Finance report is accepted. Petitions and claims.
There are none.
Matters requested.
They've been passed out, but everything is, I should tell these people here that they were passed out today. Everything's on the agendas, either committee of the whole, so there's nothing new.
Thank you. Citizens addressing council. In? Okay. First reading of ordinances and resolutions.
Resolution number 55, presented by all of council, sponsored by Mr. Greer, titled Commendation to Ron Gable. A resolution of the council of the city of Barberton to honor and give public recognition to Ron Gable for his 36 years of dedicated service to the city.
Motion to suspend, Mr. Greer.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the rule as required by section 5.10 of the Barberton City Charter be suspended.
Thank you. And Mrs. Angela.
Thank you, Mr. President. I will second that motion to suspend.
Thank you. Motion was made by Mr. Greer, second by Mrs. Angela, to suspend the rule as required by section 5.10 of the Barberton City Charter. Are there any remarks? Clerk, please call the roll on suspension.
Mr. Jaber?
Yes.
Mrs. DeBevick? Mrs. Fry?
Yes.
Mrs. Coburn?
Yes.
Mr. Heide?
Yes.
Mr. Greer?
Yes.
Mrs. Angela?
Yes.
Mr. Griffin?
Yes.
Motion to adopt, Mr. Greer.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for the adoption of resolution number 55-2020.
Thank you. And Mrs. Angela.
Thank you, Mr. President. I will second the motion to adopt, resolution 55-2020.
Thank you. Motion was made by Mr. Greer, second by Mrs. Angela, to adopt resolution number 55-2020. Are there any remarks?
Yes, Mr. President.
Okay.
Just want to say a little about Ron Gable. What a great guy. I called him for many, many years the walking encyclopedia. He's a book of knowledge. We should all learn from him. No matter what was wrong or what he had to do, he was very specific with it, and he was right to the point. And it was a privilege to know Ron and to work with him. He was an outstanding employee and such a gentle man. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Clerk, please call the roll on adoption.
Mr. Griffin?
Yes.
Oh, go ahead.
Mrs. Angela? What's the other?
Never mind.
Mrs. Angela?
Yes.
Mr. Greer?
Yes.
Mr. Heide?
Yes.
Mrs. Coburn?
Yes.
Mrs. Fry?
Yes.
Mrs. DeBevick?
Yes.
Mr. Jaber?
Yes.
Did we mess up?
No.
Okay.
I thought he was going to make a statement.
Oh, okay.
That's all.
Probably will when we present it to him.
Right, okay.
Resolution number 56-2020, presented by all of council, sponsored by Mrs. DeBevick, titled Commendation Chief Kim Baldwin. A resolution of the council of the city of Barberton to honor and give public recognition Chief Kim Baldwin for his 31 years of dedicated service to Barberton Fire Department.
Motion to suspend, Mrs. DeBevick.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the rule as required by section 5.10 of the Barberton City Charter be suspended.
And Mr. Greer.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move or second the suspension of the resolution.
Thank you. Motion was made by Mrs. DeBevick and second by Mr. Greer to suspend the rule as required by section 5.10 of the Barberton City Charter. Are there any remarks? Clerk, please call the roll on suspension.
Mrs. Fry?
Yes.
Mr. Greer?
Yes.
Mrs. Coburn?
Yes.
Mrs. DeBevick?
Yes.
Mrs. Angela?
Yes.
Mr. Griffin?
Yes.
Mr. Heide?
Yes.
Mr. Jaber?
Yes.
Motion to adopt, Mrs. DeBevick.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for the adoption of resolution number 56-2020.
Thank you. Mr. Greer.
Thank you, Mr. President. I second the motion.
Mr. Bevitt, second by Mr. Greer, to adopt resolution number 56, 2020. Are there any remarks? Clerk, please call the roll on adoption.
Mr. Jaber?
Yes.
Mr. Heidi?
Yes.
Mr. Griffin?
Yes.
Mrs. Angela?
Yes.
Mrs. DeBevick?
Yes.
Mrs. Coburn?
Yes.
Mr. Greer?
Yes.
Mrs. Fry?
Yes.
Resolution number 57, 2020, presented by all of council, sponsored by Mrs. DeBevick, titled Commendation Firefighter Dave Connor. A resolution of the council of the city of Barberton to honor and give public recognition to firefighter Dave Connor for his 28 years of dedicated service to the city as a member of the Barberton Fire Department.
Motion to suspend. Mrs. DeBevick.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the rules as required by section 5.10 of the Barberton Charter be suspended.
Thank you. And Mr. Greer.
Thank you, Mr. President. I second the motion on suspension.
Thank you. Motion was made by Mrs. DeBevick, second by Mr. Greer, to suspend the rule as required by section 5.10 of the Barberton City Charter. Are there any remarks? Clerk, please call the roll on suspension.
Mr. Heidi?
Yes.
Mrs. Coburn?
Yes.
Mrs. DeBevick?
Yes.
Mr. Greer?
Yes.
Mr. Griffin?
Yes.
Mr. Jaber?
Yes.
Mrs. Fry?
Yes.
Mrs. Angela?
Yes.
Motion to adopt. Mrs. DeBevick.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for the adoption of resolution number 57, 2020.
Thank you. And Mr. Greer.
Thank you, Mr. President. I second the motion for adoption of resolution number 57, 2020.
Thank you. Motion was made by Mrs. DeBevick, second by Mr. Greer, to adopt resolution 57, 2020. Are there any remarks? Clerk, please call the roll on adoption.
Mrs. Angela?
Yes.
Mrs. Fry?
Yes.
Mr. Jaber?
Yes.
Mr. Griffin?
Yes.
Mr. Greer?
Yes.
Mrs. DeBevick?
Yes.
Mrs. Coburn?
Yes.
Mr. Heidi?
Yes.
End of first readings.
Second reading of ordinances and resolutions.
Ordinance number 46, 2020, presented by Mr. Griffin, titled Proposed Charter Amendment, Elimination of Primary Election. An ordinance authorizing and directing the Summit County Board of Elections to submit a proposed charter amendment to the electors of the city of Barberton to abolish the primary election held on the 8th Tuesday prior to such general municipal election, to reduce the cost of elections for the Barberton taxpayers to be voted upon at the November 3rd, 2020 general election. It's the second reading only. Ordinance number 47, 2020, presented by Mr. Griffin, titled Proposed Charter Amendment, Primary Election Date. An ordinance authorizing and directing the Summit County Board of Elections to submit a proposed charter amendment to the electors of the city of Barberton to establish a May primary election date for municipal elections in the city of Barberton in order to reduce the cost of primary election for the Barberton taxpayers to be voted upon at the November 3rd, 2020 general election and declare an emergency. I'm sorry, but is this supposed to have an emergency wording?
I didn't think charter.
I didn't think,
Had that.
for some reason, I think you did not want an emergency.
I don't think charter amendments usually have those, do they? I didn't want it.
Okay, I don't think you wanted it, I just saw it and thought of it. Okay, ordinance number 50, 2020, presented by Mrs. Angela, titled Formation of a Community Improvement Corporation. An ordinance authorizing the formation of a community improvement corporation for the city of Barberton and approving its articles of incorporation and declaring an emergency. And that's the end of second readings.
Thank you. Third reading of ordinances and resolutions.
Ordinance number 39, 2020, presented by Mrs. Fry, titled Enter into Contract, Regional Income Tax Agency. An ordinance authorizing the Director of Finance to enter into contract with Regional Income Tax Agency, RETA, to administer the city's income tax starting January 1st, 2021, and declaring an emergency.
Motion to adopt. Mrs. Fry.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for the adoption of ordinance number 39, 2020.
And Mrs. DeBevick.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to second Mrs. Fry's motion on adoption.
Thank you. Motion was made by Mrs. Fry, second by Mrs. DeBevick to adopt ordinance number 39, 2020. Are there any remarks? Clerk, please call the roll on adoption.
Mrs. DeBevick?
Yes.
Mr. Heidick?
Yes.
Mr. Griffin?
Yes.
Mrs. Fry?
Yes.
Mrs. Angela?
Yes.
Mrs. Coburn?
Yes.
Mr. Jaber?
Yes.
Mr. Brier?
Yes.
End of third reading.
Appointments.
We have the Charter Review Commission. We have Mr. Terry Avent, Mr. Tom Harmon, Amy Jones, Ken Masick, Mike Moore, Rick Myers, and Ray Todd.
Motion to appoint Mrs. Fry.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to appoint the Charter Review Commission consisting of members Terry Avent, Tom Harmon, Amy Jones, Ken Masick, Mike Moore, Rick Myers, and Ray Todd.
Okay. And Mrs. DeBevick.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to second Mrs. Fry's motion on appointment.
Thank you. It was moved by Mrs. Fry and second by Mrs. DeBevick to appoint Terry Avent, Tom Harmon, Amy Jones, Ken Masick, Mike Moore, Vic Myers, and Ray Todd to the Charter Review Commission. Are there any remarks? Mr. Grier.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is kind of odd because I don't know how to really address this. I got two things. First off, one, why even have this process if it doesn't matter, like stated earlier? And two, there was a public statement made by one of my constituents, Brad Garrett, on the live stream. And I'll just read it. It probably is not going to change anything, but I will quote it. Is it okay if I quote what he wrote?
Absolutely.
Okay. It says, to Justin P. Greer, my representative for Ward 1, Brad Garrett stated that he has been unable to have adequate engagement and would like the postponement of the vote until the mayor can get him the application, which will be filed promptly in 48 hours. Brad Garrett then replied to that saying, I'm requesting in this manner because I cannot physically, I'm not physically present in council chambers. And that's all he had to say. And that's all I have to say.
Anyone else?
Mrs.
Just-
DeBevick?
I got President.
Mrs. DeBevick?
Thank you, Mr. President. I first want to say that, taking Mr. Garrett's comments into consideration, I agree with him. However, I will be reluctantly voting yes this evening for these appointments for two reasons. The first one is I truly believe that the Charter Review Commission should have already been appointed, have enough time to properly review the charter. And so I'm concerned about prolonging that for 2 more weeks. And I had addressed that with the mayor several weeks ago via email. And secondly, I know these people and I know they're good people and I know they're gonna do a good job. But moving forward, I wanna make it known that we have to get something in place for appointments. It's something that I've been passionate about for many years, and here we are back with the same conversation. So, but I will be voting yes because I believe that we have to get this process underway if we want it properly. And that's what's best for our citizens. So, with that, that's all I have.
Thank you. Mr. Jaber.
I also had Mr. Brad Garrett email me and message me, and I had two other constituents in my ward also email me, and I will be voting no. And reasons voting for no, just again, no communication with the city administration, with the people. I mean, Brad Garrett had no idea about this. That's just one. I got his name is Tom. Even though the other gentleman who on there and also Amy, I looked them up and I got which resumes were given to us. There's still 3 missing. still think that we should have more time to look over the other resumes and make the right choice. And again, these are a commission that the administrators are picking, not what we chose. So with that, you go and know, sir.
Okay. Anyone else? Mr. Hyde?
Thank you, Mr. President. I will be voting yes on these, and that is only because as elected at large to represent the entire city, I can tell you my dealings with all seven. I do know them personally. I do know their capabilities. The only thing I don't like is I do see some repeats, and if on the Charter Review Commission, I would think that every 5 years we would try to get new names. But I do know these people. They're well capable of the job.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. President. I respect everyone's opinion on this, but do know the process was held up because of the public meetings and COVID. So there was a lot of talk back and forth and information on how to conduct public meetings and what that was going to look like. So once we got that notice, actually before that notice, we started working on the Charter Review Commission. There are some members who have served previously, but I think that really goes to provide great historical knowledge on what has happened in the past. I think that, not only did we post this twice in the paper and received 0 resumes for this spot, which had me go out and ask people, and some people said no, they did not want to be a part of this commission. I sent an email out to council this Saturday with the bios or the questionnaires. No one turned in a resume. The questionnaires that was provided to council, the rules committee last year, provided what I had on hand, stating that I was anticipating the rest of them by council or by very soon. That did not happen, so this morning I sent out a second email with a short bio on the 3 who I'm still waiting for their questionnaires. And as I've mentioned previously tonight, those questionnaires could be downstairs. I had to run out for an appointment, ran back, came in for council, received no questions over the weekend or today. So those could be down there tonight. After council, if those are there or whenever I receive them, all of council will receive a copy. So I encourage council to vote yes for these appointees, to confirm them. They do meet all the qualifications per the charter and want to get this Charter Review Commission moving forward.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Mr. President, I'll add on my statement. Again, these people are all good people, good requirements, good history. But again, we got to find a better way to reach out to the people instead of just the Herald or the newspaper, he calls it. There's got to be a better way to let people know the job openings, like under the city website. If we could update that instead of having the last 5 years, same website, same people's names, same numbers. That way people reach out to those council members, they see old council members, old phone numbers, old people, planning directors' names. It's not easy updated. They keep saying the newspaper. There's got to be a different way besides the newspaper. With that, and thank you.
Okay.
Just a point of clarification, we put in the newspaper, which is per Ohio Revised Code, and we also may use the social media for both advertisements.
Okay. Anyone else? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
Okay. The ayes have it. All are appointed. Miscellaneous and unfinished business. Nothing? Communication for the mayor.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm very excited to announce, working with the Barberton Community Foundation, that they did approve the city's technology grant. And this will be matched with the other organization in town that stepped up to the plate to be announced soon. So we're working with them to start to order the equipment and start making the install. Held a meeting today of the committee which was formed for the reopening of the state and how it affects our community. Barberton for today and tomorrow is the name of the committee. We're looking at not only community events, but the local economy, stimulus programs, safeguards, things of that nature. So we're working with the foundation and BCDC on a second phase of stimulus programs for small businesses, and that should be rolling out pretty quickly. There's some talk earlier this evening, and we talked about this in the meeting this morning about closing streets for pedestrian traffic. And I believe this is key and vital to the continuation of building the downtown area. And this is not a new idea. We've been doing this for the last few years as we have downtown events and different things going on. Now the downtown businesses rely on community events. Since those events are somewhat in jeopardy of functioning, there are other things that we can do to assist the downtown businesses. And so we're taking that under advisement and we're moving forward. When we talk about community events, ones that are planned for the year and how to hold those events, the goal is to, one, hold the event. If we can't, and hold it as we typically do, how can we hold the event in a modified version? So we're looking at that. Or do we have to cancel the event? We'd like to hold the event or at least modify it for the quality of life aspect for the public. Can we schedule different events? So we're thinking about those things and moving swiftly. Other things like youth baseball leagues, adult leagues, things of that nature are really out of our hands at this point. So we're waiting for more input from the state as we move forward with this. But at some point, it may be too late for a summer league. So I've been in contact with the youth and adult league organizers, and we're keeping them informed and communicating back and forth. That's all I have for this evening. We're continuing with our business visits and communication with them and trying to help them as much as possible. So just still a lot of going on, and we're going to keep moving forward and working with the state and the county and the federal government and doing what we can to protect the citizens and also boost our local economy. That's all I have.
Thank you very much. Okay, anything else from anybody? Mr. Gray.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to thank the Parks Commissioners. I was at that meeting that they had, and that's a hard decision, and there were some good different viewpoints, but thank the commissioners for that. They did approve going forward with some form of Home Fest in the future. I personally think that was the right way to do it. As the mayor mentioned just now, how do we move forward? That's the next question, but they did approve it, and that was a hard decision. Also, June 1st, my nonprofit Better Barberton will be starting up the Barberton cleanup days again as we did last year. So if anybody has any council members, have any residents that want to get involved outside of the parks beautification and the city's beautification, we are moving forward June 1st. We had to push it back a little bit because of the COVID stuff. But any resident that wants to get involved with that, we do cleanups twice a month instead, and we just pick locations and we'll spread it out sporadically as needed for safety. But with that, I have nothing else.
Okay, anyone else?
Mr. President, yes.
Go for it.
Just a reminder during the planning committee, I'll need to cut me off. That's the second time it's happened during committee meetings. If you can't acknowledge her, just a reminder, that's the second time she's done that. And if she keeps doing that, I think she should either go through some guidelines or read the books of how the council runs things. And she still doesn't understand that. I think she should step down from her position because obviously she does not run it the right way. Being as a council member, cutting other council members off. So I just want on record, if you can speak to her, please, you being as president, and you are in charge. This is your office. And if you can acknowledge that, if she does happen again, there should be circumstances. And I think she should step down because obviously she's not following your rules. So I appreciate that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anyone else? I have a couple things. The yard sale that was scheduled for the second week of June will be postponed to a later date. I think if we had it, I think a lot of people would be skeptical about coming out to it. So we'll just postpone it to another time. And our next meeting will be 2 weeks and 1 day. It'll be on Tuesday because of Memorial Day is the 25th, and we will meet on the 26th. Anything else?
Yes, Mr. President.
Okay.
I want to thank the administration, the mayor, and all the people involved involved. The water is going down in, Nelson Park. I seen where they worked on the curb and, made it lower and made a way for the water to escape. The person at 545 Van Buren, he was able to light his hot water tank, on the 7th, and he's grateful. And now he has hot water after over a month. So we're very happy for him. And also I want to thank Kyle and David from the building department. I have 2 residents, that called me. They were very happy and, related to what they did. They came out and took pictures of, the neighbors next door to them. And, they talked to them, and so far, the people have really cleaned up. It's not 100%, but it's 100% better. So they, thank me, and I want to thank everyone that's involved. So, I would like to say that, if we just do one thing at a time like that, it means a lot to the citizens, because most people then generally, they want to keep their property cleaned up. So, but sometimes we just have to lean on the perpetrators of just a little bit to let them know that we're looking at them. So, all I have to say is, it's really good feeling to have people call me and tell them that, it looks really good and they have a better feel for our community. And, even in these uncertain times, with low finance and not enough personnel, we still can accomplish something. So Bill, hats off to the administration and all the people involved, and thank you again.
Thank you. Anyone else? Mr. Mayor.
I just want to let everyone know that I will be leaving for the committee of a whole meeting. I will be downstairs scheduling a meeting with the Charter Review Commission, and I'll check to see if the rest of those questionnaires are there. But I wanted to let all of council know and the public that I will be downstairs skipping the meeting to get some more work done. You never know what kind of accusations might be thrown out there that are totally false. So I just wanted to let everyone know where I'll be. Thank you.
Anyone else? With nothing else, do I have a motion to adjourn? Mrs. DeBevitt.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to make a motion that we adjourn.
And Mr. Hyde.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll second the motion to adjourn.
Thank you. The motion was made by Mrs. DeBevitt and second by Mr. Hyde that we adjourn. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned at 8:50. Okay, we'll do a 2-minute break and then we'll go right into the committee of the whole meeting.
They're rotating. 2-week shift. Because they're still working yeah, I think we did some extra. And in fact, they end up working Good Friday as well. It's a city holiday, but they had to work Good Friday because there were just too many trees now. Yeah, the 20th, I think, tentatively, that's gonna be by roll today.
I'll send you an email.
What's that? Yeah, that's fine.
How was Mother's Day over at Regina?
Probably the most miserable day I've ever worked in my life. Because restaurants should never operate that way. That's not how we were set up.
No.
Not how any restaurant was.
Oh,
That was,
from,
that probably caused a lot of people across the industry to quit their jobs with what happened. It was terrifying.
From a consumer perspective, it was smooth.
Yes. I'm just glad I don't have that online DoorDash or anything like that
Oh,
active, because those places set their times. So you order through those and they're telling you 30 minutes, and you come in 30 minutes later, we're telling you still got 2 more hours.
I wanted to call and get like warm food for dinner, and I was like, well, I'll call about 45 minutes before. I'm glad I called an hour before.
At one point, we were an hour and a half, and at another point, we told them we weren't taking any more orders. Because we didn't know how to even stock for it. You know,
Well, yeah, that's why I asked you. I was like, how's the stock?
and I did run out of prime rib about 6:30.
Last Tuesday, Cinco de Mayo, all Mexican places were the same way.
I left the
Hour
deal
and a
and I
half.
said, I don't even know why I came to work on that. We got Tuesday, which is Mexican restaurants, big day anyway, and Cinco de Mayo on the same day. I was like, why am I here?
Yeah, it was crazy. Which is a great thing to see.
Yeah, it's good,
I mean,
but
they were
You
running-
know, it hurt the Mexican restaurants that day when you saw how destroyed all of them were, is they've always been promoting since it's takeout only for so long, those big family pack things. Well, you get enough people to order those, and you're backed up.
yeah.
You walk in the door to turn the lights on, and you're backed up for 3 hours.
Okay, let's get this thing going here. This is a committee of the whole meeting, the Barberton City Council. It is Monday, May 11th, 2020. I call this meeting together at 8:53. Okay, first up is planning, annexation, and codes with Mrs. Angela.
Sorry, I'm here. Planning annexation and code this evening, 7:07. All committee members were there along with council members, and yes, as noted, we had our second reading on the formation of a community improvement corporation. I thank Mr. Heidi for his suggestions, that he had emailed to all of council and to mayor, and we were in discussion with his suggestions. Miscellaneous, we had, Mr. Jabber, talking about the semi trucks. I couldn't hear the whole thing. 5 or 6 of them that was parked on Norton Avenue, which I believe that's a Shamrock Inn. Then we adjourned at 7:40 p.m.
Thank you. Next up is street sidewalks and lighting, Mr. Greer.
Thank you, Mr. President. Street, sidewalk, and lighting met today, May 11th, 2020, at 6:42 p.m. in the council chambers. All committee members were present. Mrs. Angeloff and Mrs. Fry were remote on GoToMeeting. All of the council members were present and guests noted on the paper. For topics of discussion, we had no legislation. We do have a current piece of legislation that'll be, well, that was read. Resolution number 55, 2020, titled Accommodation Ron Gable. Miscellaneous discussion, hot mix asphalt. Our workforce is reduced about 50% across the board, not just the service department. They are out doing hot mix, and the hot box is out patching roads. And that is it. Street, sidewalk, and lighting adjourned at 6:42 p.m.
Thank you very much. Next up is Mrs. Colburn with City Utilities.
City utilities met this evening, remotely. All members were present. We had no request for legislation and no miscellaneous discussion. I ask.
Thank you. Public welfare and safety, Mrs. DeBevick.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Public Welfare and Safety Committee met this evening at 6:20 in council chambers and remotely. We had one late request for legislation in which we needed to invoke Council Rule 702 to suspend Council Rule 302. This was a draft ordinance titled Appropriation Fire Department. It will be referred to Finance. It is an ordinance appropriating $7,185.57 from the unappropriated item of the general fund to the fire department operating budget. This money came from the CARES fund, and it was strictly for the fire department. It was used for PPE, and it was only for ambulance. And in total, the fire department received $16,935.57. So that will be referred to finance and voted on next week. We also had two additional pieces of legislation. They were resolutions, and we passed those. They were commendations for our Chief Kim Baldwin and firefighter Dave Connor for their retirement. And then we had some miscellaneous discussion regarding the closing of downtown streets to possibly allow some of our restaurants to have outdoor seating. I emailed Mrs. Doherty and both chiefs some information that I had garnered on the topic, and I emailed all of council a really good read about that includes restaurants. So if you get a chance to do that. And with that, public welfare and safety will pass.
Thank you. Mr. Griffin with Rules, Marketing, and Development.
Thank you, Mr. President. Rules, Marketing, and Development met tonight, May 11th. We met remotely and in council chambers. Tonight, we have no request for legislation. But we have current legislation, ordinance number 46-2020, titled Proposed Charter Amendment, Elimination of Primary Elections, second reading. We also had ordinance number 47-2020, titled Proposed Charter Amendment, Primary Election, was also the second reading. In our remarks, we talked about both the proposed ordinance in remarks and miscellaneous. We have a motion to adjourn. We adjourn at 7:06 with that I pass.
Thank you. Environmental Health and Social Services, Mr. Jake.
Thank you, sir. Thanks, President. Environmental Health and Social Services met tonight at 7:07, May 11, 2020 in council chambers. Members all present noted, other council members also noted. We had no request for legislation and no discussion. And with that, I pass, sir.
Thank you. City Properties, Parks, and Recreation, Mr. Hyde.
Thank you, Mr. President. City Properties, Parks, and Recreation met this evening, May 11th, 2020, at 6 p.m. in the council chambers. All members were present, plus guests noted, and those remote. We had no request for legislation. Our miscellaneous discussion involved moving forward with the dog park expansion, looking at modifications to any summer and fall programs, and moving forward with the Mum Fest, including viewing modifications if need be. Greg Tracy said the sports complex Betts Beach's work is ongoing with just a few setbacks regarding the pandemic and all that fun stuff. And I do have something we'll be calling for next week, and I'll have more details on that next week about the law director has requested council's authorization for the mayor to enter into an MOU between Barberton, Norton, and Healthcare Ministries involving the cemetery over at the old Portage Middle School or elementary school, depending on what generation you are. We adjourned at 6:23, and with that, I pass.
Thank you very much. Finance and Personnel, Mrs. Fry.
Thank you, Mr. President. Finance and Personnel met tonight at the council chambers and remotely. All members of the committee were present, as well as guests as noted. legislation and had been on Council 702, this is 10 Council 302. It was a draft ordinance titled Appropriation Fire Department. It is appropriating $7,185.57 from the unappropriated item of the general fund fire department operating budget. This was just explained by Mrs. Devick from safety. It was referred to us from safety, and it said it was from the CARES relief package, and it was for COVID-related expenses for the fire department. We have one piece of existing legislation on the agenda, and it was to implement a contract with the Regional Income Tax Agency, also known as RITA. This was the third reading, and it was passed. Mr. Heidick asked if the mayor and Jeremy would like to weigh in about whether or not they preferred CCA or RITA. And Mr. Slaker did get up and said that he felt that RITA would supply us with more reporting options. It would save us money and also provide better service because some things can be done online that could not be done online with the CCA. Mr. Slaker then gave us the April 2020 finance report, and that was accepted tonight also. We had appointments in the form of the Charter Review Commission. We appointed the members that had shown interest in being on the commission. They are Terry Avant, Amy Jones, Tom Arnden, Ken Mason, Mike Moore, Vic Myers, and Ray Todd. There was no miscellaneous discussion. However, I would like to make a statement. Before COVID, when we were still meeting in council chambers, I believe it was last meeting, and Mr. Heidick had gotten up and voiced his opinion about the fact that he didn't like the way that council members were talking with one another. And he said it was embarrassing. And I would like everyone to evaluate how they are handling themselves in the meetings and at least use some decorum. Even any political organization respects their colleagues, whether they agree with them or not. And I think going forward, it would really be nice if people didn't call other people out for what they feel is some infraction against them. And when you are holding a meeting, if you are the chair of that meeting, you control it, and you can either allow people to speak or not. And if you aren't on the committee, I don't believe that the chairperson does have to let you make comments, especially if they're not really about the subject that is being discussed. And with that, I will pass.
Thank you very much. Anything else from the good of the body? I'd like to say one thing. It is hard to communicate with these mics. These have probably been here 25 years. And they're having a hard time hearing on their end of the meeting. Especially, when I said my meeting tonight, I yelled into this mic. That's the only way they're going to hear you. You got to really talk up loud, and you got to talk very close to the microphone. It's bad enough that they're old and everything, but if you don't do that, you might not be heard. And if you're talking and you go back like this, you're fading out. Like I said, these have been here for at least 25 years. And I believe when we get the new system, we're going to get new mics. So that'll help out too. And, this is how we have to do this. And it's not the greatest. And hopefully we can get that new system in. And I think it'll be a lot easier to communicate, and you won't have to yell. I'm just thankful I have a big mouth. It comes in handy sometime. Anything else? Okay, this meeting is adjourned at 9:07.